Hi, I'm Paul Evans. I am the Process Engineering Manager here at JEPCO.
Hi, my name is James Yates. I'm a staff process engineer and kind of Paul's right-hand man in the process group.
What surprises clients the most about process design? I think one of the things that often gets overlooked in the early stages of a project is the impact of a new project on ancillary systems such as utilities like flares, cooling water, instrument air, the wastewater treatment system. Most projects are going to have an impact on those, and if you don't take it into account, those effects can snowball, really add to the cost and schedule of the project, and lead to a headache later on down the line. Which is why we try to early on establish a basis of design, make sure we get the scope really set.
We like to follow a kind of a process. Most of our clients follow some sort of stage gate process when they do projects. We have lots of clients that specifically use the FEL front end loading, 1, 2, 3 stage gates and detailed engineering. And there's different milestones and different deliverables at each one of those. And that process is kind of set up not only to help the refinery or the end client, but also it helps the EPC company track our milestones and know what level of detail we need to do for each stage gate. We have different parameters that we look for in each stage gate. So that process is important, not only to capture scope, but also budget and schedule. And as Paul mentioned, scope creep and not fully accounting for scope can definitely be shocking to the client if minor process changes are taking place late in a project, like that last stage gate or detailed engineering. The ripple effects those effects have on other disciplines, instrumentation, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, rework, budget, schedules can all get thrown out of whack if process isn't fully scoped early on in the project. So it's very important, extremely important that the process is extremely well defined and the project is well scoped early on.
Yeah, and especially with a lot of our clients where we work in refineries, the schedule can be very important sometimes, depending on the project. If it has to go in during a turnaround, sometimes you've got just a 2-week window for this to go in, and it has to be all the engineering needs to be finalized at least 6 months in advance, usually more than that. Otherwise, you can't get it put in. You're gonna have to wait another 3+ years to get it in. So if that schedule starts to slip, that can completely kill a project.
And even beyond schedule, if certain aspects of a project, ancillary equipment is a good example. Sometimes they're not well thought about because they aren't directly involved in the process, but maybe support the process. If costs for those ancillary equipment, piping, engineering isn't accounted for early on, the cost associated with that, if that comes in late in the project, can derail the project simply from a budget standpoint too.
So question is, how do we stay aligned with operations during design? That's very important topic. It actually goes along well with establishing scope. And we want to make sure as early as possible that we can get operations involved, because a lot of times you'll get an operator with 20, 30, 40 years at the plant that knows a lot of things that other people don't know about the way system operates. How the P&IDs may be completely different from what's actually in the field, especially when it comes to steam or other utilities. A lot of times those P&IDs are not up to snuff, and so you get operations involved, and they can kind of help ferret out those little details that are going to be missing. And the sooner you do that, the better. By having potentially review meetings, just getting people involved on weekly meetings. If you can get operations involved, that's going to help a ton.
Yeah, I completely agree. Oftentimes, operations aren't asked to review things until late in a project when we start doing design review meetings well into the stage gate process. And at that point, it's probably too late. It's possible that they have no input and there is no consequence to that. But more times than not, these people have a lot of valuable information. And if that's not accounted for early on in the project, it can lead to a lot of scope changes, which can derail a project pretty quickly. The other thing is their experience and knowledge in operating the equipment. Operators think differently inherently than an engineer, and it's really good to get their opinion on how they want things to operate, because sometimes there's multiple ways to solve a problem, and solving it in a way that's more friendly for them to operate is key for a successful project, right? If there's 2 ways to do something and maybe it's one way slightly easier to engineer, but it's harder to operate, we're only engineering a system once, whereas they're operating it day in and day out. So it's important to take into account that sort of information from the operators.
Sometimes there's different ways we can engineer something, and for us it may not matter one way or the other, but it really helps operations if we do it one way. So getting that input from them is definitely important. I've seen installations where operations was not taken into account, and the engineering firm their name's all over it, and it's kind of a derogatory term. So we don't want to be that company that has our name attached to something that doesn't work right, or is just a real pain to operate.
And difficult to operate. Yeah. I think that's crucial for a project. Like I said, we only have to engineer it once, but the operators have to operate it day in and day out. So if it is a little harder to engineer it one way, but it's smoother and easier for the operators, that's going to be a successful project. Obviously, that needs to align with the capital budget, but more times than not, the client is going to side on easier operation.